All right, so get ready, because today we're diving deep into a case that's both intriguing and unsettling: the unsolved alphabet murders in Rochester, New York.
Yeah.
We're talking eyewitness accounts, potential suspects, and a whole lot of lingering questions surrounding the deaths of 3 young girls between 1971 and 1973.
And you know what makes this case so disturbing, fascinating and disturbing, frankly, is this potential pattern we see.
Right.
Each victim had double initials, and then their bodies were found near towns that started with the same letter.
Almost like, something out of like a detective novel,
Yeah.
except this is all too real.
Sadly.
So let's unpack the first case.
Okay.
Carmen Colón in 1971.
Right?
She was running an errand just to the pharmacy for her grandmother when things took a terrifying turn.
Yeah, I mean, just a seemingly ordinary day turned into a nightmare.
Right.
And what's so striking is that multiple witnesses saw Carmen in distress, running from a car on the interstate, partially nude, clearly needing help.
You would think someone would have stopped, right?
You would think so, right?
But according to the sources, not a single person did.
Yeah, this is a really sad example of the bystander effect.
Oh, yeah.
A phenomenon where individuals in a crowd are less likely to intervene because they assume someone else will take action.
Right.
Sadly, this diffusion of responsibility might have cost Carmen precious time.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the crime itself that sparked public outrage.
Right.
It was the inaction of those who could have potentially helped her.
Absolutely. And so 2 days later, Carmen's body was found near Churchville.
Uh-huh.
And the details are grim: signs of a struggle, sexual assault, a fractured skull, and ultimately strangulation.
The brutality of the crime scene, really suggests that Carmen fought fiercely for her life.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder about the nature of her relationship with the attacker, whether there was an element of trust involved that allowed, them to get close to her.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where her uncle, Miguel Colón, becomes a key suspect in all of this. We have witness descriptions of a car similar to one that he owned, which was suspiciously clean after Carmen's disappearance.
Right. And then there's the doll belonging to Carmen.
Yeah.
That was found inside of his car.
Uh-huh.
Now, while family members claim that she frequently rode with him, the doll's presence, coupled with the car being thoroughly cleaned, certainly raises suspicion.
Right. It doesn't help that Miguel told a friend that he was leaving the country because he did something wrong in Rochester.
Yes.
Shortly after, he moved to Puerto Rico.
However, despite the circumstantial evidence, he was never charged.
Right.
There simply wasn't enough physical evidence linking him directly to the crime scene.
Wow.
And to complicate matters even further, years later, Miguel committed suicide.
So what do we make of that?
Like,
is it an admission of guilt?
Yeah.
A way to escape potential prosecution? Or was something else entirely weighing on him?
It's a question that adds another layer of complexity to this already perplexing case. His suicide, while tragic, it prevents us from getting any definitive answers.
Yeah.
Does it point to his involvement in Carmen's murder, or was he wrestling with a different set of demons?
Right.
It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the truth remains buried with those who hold it.
Absolutely. So fast forward 17 months to April 1973.
All right.
And Rochester is struck by tragedy again.
Yeah.
This time, it's 11-year-old Wanda Walkowicz. And there are already some eerie parallels to Carmen's case.
Absolutely. Both were young girls.
Right?
Both disappeared while running errands.
Yeah.
Both abducted in the early evening.
Uh-huh.
Investigators and the public were immediately on edge.
Yeah.
They were sensing a potential pattern emerging here.
Absolutely. So Wanda was last seen walking home from the store, struggling with grocery bags.
Yeah.
A detail that I think really paints a picture of her vulnerability.
It really does. It highlights how seemingly mundane activities can quickly turn dangerous. Those grocery bags likely hindered her ability to react or defend herself.
Yeah.
Making her an easier target.
For sure. A few days later, her body was found near Webster, another town starting with W.
Right.
Like Carmen, she had been sexually assaulted and strangled, but this time, a belt was likely used.
Yeah. And again, there were signs of a struggle.
Right.
Indicating that Wanda fought back against her attacker.
Yeah.
But there's a new detail that wasn't present in Carmen's case.
Okay.
White cat fur found on Wanda's clothing.
Okay, so this throws a wrench into things, right?
It does.
Does this point to a different killer?
Yeah.
Or could there be a connection we're not seeing yet?
The cat fur introduces a fascinating new element, I think.
Yeah.
It suggests that, at minimum, Wanda and our third victim, Michelle Maenza, may be connected, while Carmen's case becomes more ambiguous.
Right.
It begs the question, are we dealing with one killer who changed their MO, or multiple perpetrators operating in the same area?
All right, so hold on to your hats, folks, because we're just getting started.
Okay.
So it's November 1973, just 7 months after Wanda's murder, and the city is on edge. 11-year-old Michelle Maenza disappears while walking home from school, and the sources describe a witness seeing her crying in a speeding car. It just adds another layer of complexity to this already chilling narrative.
Yeah, the fact that she was seen crying suggests a forceful abduction, unlike Carmen, who may have known her attacker.
Right.
It adds a layer of premeditation and control on the part of the perpetrator, which is a disturbing thought.
And get this, there was a near miss.
Oh, wow.
A motorist saw Michelle on the side of the road with a man and almost stopped to help, but the driver gave him such a menacing look that he drove off. It's a haunting reminder that sometimes even the smallest decisions can have just enormous consequences.
Absolutely. This incident really raises questions about the role of awareness and intervention.
Yeah.
Had the motorist been aware of the previous abductions, would he have reacted differently?
Right.
It really highlights the importance of community vigilance and the potential impact of timely action.
Yeah, absolutely. Tragically, 2 days later, Michelle's body is found near Macedon. And guess what?
What?
White cat fur is found on her clothing as well.
The presence of the cat fur strengthens the potential link between Wanda and Michelle's cases.
Yeah.
It, points towards a possible serial offender with a specific MO, although, we can't entirely rule out a copycat scenario.
All right, so let's try to make sense of this. We've got Carmen's case, where her uncle, Miguel, remains a suspect despite the lack of physical evidence and his subsequent suicide.
Right.
Then we have Wanda and Michelle, linked by that white cat fur, suggesting a potential serial offender.
Yeah.
Could there be two separate killers at work here?
It's a plausible theory.
Yeah.
Carmen's case, with the potential family connection and the absence of the cat fur, could be an isolated incident.
Right.
Wanda and Michelle's murders, on the other hand, exhibit striking similarities, both in their execution and the presence of the cat fur, which again is highly unusual.
So where do we go from here? Who else was on the radar of investigators at the time?
Well, remember that witness who saw Michelle in the speeding car?
Yeah.
Based on their description, a composite sketch was released to the public.
Okay.
It's important to note that, composite sketches are inherently subjective and reliant on memory, so their accuracy can vary.
Right.
However, they can still be a valuable investigative tool in generating leads or joggling someone's memory.
Did the sketch lead to any breakthroughs in the case?
Unfortunately, no. Despite the widespread circulation of the sketch, no credible suspects emerged from that particular lead. The lack of concrete results, I think, underscores the challenges of relying solely on eyewitness accounts, especially in high-stress situations where memory can be unreliable.
Right. Okay, so the composite sketch was a dead end.
Yeah.
Who else were investigators looking at?
Well, there was another suspect that emerged as a person of interest, and it's a name you might recognize, Dennis Kermany, also known as the garage rapist.
Oh.
He was active in Rochester during the same time frame as the Alphabet murders, and his crimes exhibited disturbing similarities.
Wait, the garage rapist? What made him a suspect in the Alphabet murders?
Well, he was known to prey on young girls and women, and his MO involved abducting his victims and assaulting them in or near his garage.
Right.
What's particularly chilling is that he owned a car similar to the one described by witnesses in both Carmen and Wanda's cases.
Okay.
And guess what? White cat fur was found in his vehicle.
Whoa. So could this finally be the link we've been searching for?
It certainly seemed like a promising lead at the time.
Yeah.
And the story takes an even darker turn when Termini committed suicide while fleeing police after another attempted abduction.
Wow.
It makes you wonder, did he take his own life to avoid facing justice for the Alphabet murders?
It's a possibility, but it also raises the question, if he was responsible for those murders, why attempt another abduction that ultimately led to his demise?
Exactly.
It seems like a contradiction in his behavior.
Exactly. And here's where the investigation takes another frustrating turn. While the similarities and the cat fur were compelling, DNA testing later excluded Termini from Wanda's murder.
Oh, wow.
Unfortunately, no DNA samples remain from Carmen or Michelle's cases for comparison.
So we're left with this unsettling possibility.
Yeah.
Termini could still be responsible for one or both of the other murders, but we might never know for sure.
It's a classic example of how advancements in forensic technology can both solve and complicate cold cases.
Right.
We have the ability to definitively rule out suspects through DNA, but the absence of viable samples can also leave us with lingering questions and a sense of, incomplete justice.
Absolutely. It's enough to make your head spin.
Right.
So we've ruled out Miguel and Termini for at least one of the murders.
Mm-hmm.
Who else was on the investigators' radar?
Let's shift gears and talk about another notorious figure who surprisingly had some connections to Rochester.
Okay.
Kenneth Bianchi, one half of the infamous Hillside Strangler duo.
Wait a minute, the Hillside Strangler?
Yeah.
But those murders happened in Los Angeles, right?
You're right.
What's the connection to Rochester?
The Hillside Strangler killings terrorized Los Angeles between 1977 and 1978.
All right.
However, Bianchi worked as a security guard in Rochester before moving to California during the same period as the Alphabet murders.
Ah.
And the connections don't stop there.
Okay.
He owned a car similar to the one described by witnesses.
Right.
And his work placed him in close proximity to the areas where Carmen and Wanda were abducted.
Wow. Okay, those are some pretty significant overlaps.
Yeah.
Could he have been involved in the Alphabet murders before moving to Los Angeles and continuing his horrific spree with his cousin?
It's a theory that's been explored.
Yeah.
But there's a crucial detail that complicates this timeline.
Okay.
Bianchi moved to California before the Hillside Strangler murders began. Right.
So while it's geographically possible, the chronology doesn't quite align.
So we're left with a fascinating but ultimately inconclusive lead.
Right.
Bianchi has consistently denied any involvement in the Alphabet murders, even after being convicted for the Hillside Strangler killings.
Right.
And without any physical evidence to test, his connection to the Rochester cases remains purely speculative.
Yeah, it's a reminder that sometimes seemingly strong connections can lead to dead ends.
Right.
And it begs the question, are we seeing patterns that aren't truly there? Or are we missing a crucial piece of the puzzle that connects these seemingly disparate events?
All right, we've discussed Michelle Colón, Dennis Termini, and now Kenneth Bianchi, each with their own set of intriguing connections, but ultimately lacking definitive proof.
Right.
Are there any other potential suspects we should be aware of?
There's one more individual who warrants our attention, and this is where the case takes another turn into the realm of the unsettling. Joseph Nasso.
Okay.
Now stick with me here because the similarities to the Alphabet murders are truly chilling. Okay, I'm all ears. Lay it on me.
Joseph Nasso was convicted in California for the murders of 4 women between 1977 and 1994.
Okay.
He was dubbed the Alphabet Killer because, you guessed it, his victims were all women whose first and last names started with the same letter.
No way, another Alphabet killer. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Are we talking about some kind of twisted copycat situation?
It's certainly a question that investigators explored,
Right.
and the connections don't end there.
Okay.
Nasso lived in Rochester during the early 1970s, the same time as the Alphabet murders, and he frequently traveled between New York and California.
So could this be the missing link? Did Nasso start his Alphabet killings in Rochester, then continue them in California years later?
Right.
It seems almost too perfect to be a coincidence.
It's a compelling theory, and the similarities in his MO are undeniably eerie.
Yeah.
However, DNA testing has excluded Nasso from Wanda's murder, leaving us with yet another tantalizing lead that ultimately dead ends.
Ugh. It's like every time we get close to a possible answer, we hit another wall. So we've got Miguel, potentially a crime of passion, but no physical evidence. Termini, the white cat fur connection, but DNA evidence excluding him from at least one murder. Bianchi, geographically and chronologically a bit of a stretch, but with some unsettling overlaps. And now Nasso, this chilling Alphabet pattern, but again excluded by DNA evidence.
Right.
What does it all mean?
It's a testament to the complexities of cold cases.
Yeah.
Sometimes, despite our best efforts and the advancements in forensic technology, the answers remain elusive.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we stop searching.
Right.
Maybe there's a piece of the puzzle we've overlooked, a detail hidden in plain sight that could unlock the truth.
You're right. We owe it to Carmen, Wanda, and Michelle to keep digging, to keep asking questions, and to never give up hope that someday justice will prevail.
Absolutely. And perhaps by examining these cases, by understanding the investigative challenges and the complexities of human behavior, we can learn valuable lessons that might prevent future tragedies.
I think that's a great point. This case, as frustrating as it is, can teach us a lot about the importance of awareness, intervention, and the constant pursuit of justice, even when the trail seems cold.
Precisely. It's a stark reminder that even in the face of uncertainty and unanswered questions, the pursuit of truth and accountability should never cease.
Well, listeners, that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive into the alphabet murders.
Okay.
We've examined the key suspects, analyzed the evidence, and grappled with the frustration of dead ends and unanswered questions.
Yeah.
But our journey isn't over yet. In part 3, we'll delve into the lingering mysteries surrounding these cases and explore the enduring impact they've had on the city of Rochester. So we've explored these really chilling details of the alphabet murders, analyzed the possible suspects, and yet we're still left with honestly more questions than answers. Like piecing together a puzzle with some of the pieces missing.
Right.
Frustrating, but also somehow I think even more compelling because of that.
It's that very uncertainty, the unanswered questions, that keep these cases alive, in the public imagination.
Right.
They become almost like urban legends, prompting endless speculation and what-ifs.
So let's talk about some of those lingering mysteries.
Okay.
Starting with those double initials. I mean, were that just a bizarre coincidence?
Right.
Or was it like a deliberate pattern on the part of the killer?
It's the question that has haunted investigators and armchair detectives for decades, right?
Yeah.
On one hand, the odds of 3 victims with double initials, all found near towns with matching letters, just seem astronomically low.
Yeah.
It begs the question, was the killer trying to send a message?
Right.
Create a signature.
Right.
Play like a twisted game with the authorities.
It's almost too perfect, too eerie to be just random.
It really is.
But statistically speaking, our sources point out that the odds of this happening aren't as impossible as you might think.
Yeah, exactly. Some researchers have even argued that if the killer was specifically targeting victims based solely on their double initials, it would require an immense amount of planning,
right,
stalking, pre-selection,
right,
which actually increases the risk of getting caught.
So maybe it was just a really, really freaky coincidence.
Right.
But then there's the question of, are we dealing with one killer or multiple?
Right.
I mean, Carmen's case, with the potential family connection and the lack of cat fur, seems different from Wanda and Michelle's.
Yeah, the cat fur found on Wanda and Michelle is a crucial piece of evidence that can't be ignored.
Right.
It creates a potential link between those 2 cases, suggesting a possible serial offender with a specific MO.
Right.
But Carmen's case, without the cat fur and with the cloud of suspicion surrounding her uncle, might be an entirely separate tragedy.
It's a tough call to make, especially with, the limited forensic technology available at the time.
Right.
Imagine if these cases happened today.
Yeah.
I mean, would advancements in DNA analysis and other forensic techniques change the outcome?
Absolutely. The evolution of forensic science since the 1970s is astounding.
Yeah.
DNA testing alone could potentially solve these cases.
Right.
Or at least definitively rule out certain suspects.
Right.
We might have concrete answers about whether Carmen's case was isolated or if there was a single perpetrator responsible for all 3 murders.
It's fascinating and a bit frustrating to think about how just the passage of time can both hinder and potentially aid these investigations.
Mm-hmm.
We've lost valuable time, potential evidence.
Right.
But the advancements in forensic technology give us hope that maybe someday these cold cases could be just cracked wide open.
It's a glimmer of hope for the families of the victims and for the community still haunted by these unsolved mysteries.
Right.
The possibility, however slim, that justice might still be served.
And speaking of lost evidence, our sources mentioned that all physical evidence from Carmen and Michelle's cases is gone. No DNA, no fibers, no trace evidence.
Yeah.
If those cases happened today with the meticulous evidence collection and preservation techniques we have now, could they have been solved?
It's impossible to say for sure, but the odds of solving those cases would be significantly higher.
Yeah.
Think about touch DNA, something virtually unheard of in the 1970s.
Right.
Today, we can extract DNA profiles from, the slightest touch, a fingerprint, a doorknob, a piece of clothing.
Yeah.
This level of sensitivity could have been a game changer in these investigations.
It's both remarkable and heartbreaking to consider how the evolution of forensic science could have potentially rewritten the ending to these tragic stories.
It really is.
It makes you wonder how many other cold cases out there could be solved with the technology we have today.
It's a thought-provoking question, and it underscores the importance of continually reevaluating cold cases, applying new technologies and investigative techniques in the hope of uncovering the truth.
Right.
The advancements in forensic science offer a powerful tool for seeking justice for victims and their families, even decades after the crimes occurred.
Well, listeners, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the alphabet murders.
Yeah.
It's been a journey through chilling details, complex evidence, and frustrating dead ends.
It really has.
While we may never know for sure who was responsible for these tragedies, we hope this exploration has shed light on the intricacies of unsolved cases, the advancements in forensic science, and the importance of seeking justice for victims no matter how much time has passed.
Absolutely. And if there's one thing we hope you take away from this deep dive, it's this. Never stop questioning, never stop seeking the truth, and never forget the victims whose stories deserve to be heard and remembered.
Yeah.
Perhaps someday new evidence will surface, a breakthrough will occur, and these cases will finally be solved, bringing closure to a community that has lived with these mysteries for far too long.
Until then, stay curious, keep those detective hats on, and remember, sometimes the most compelling stories are those that remain shrouded in mystery.